And we're back.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting. We love doing this every week in terms of breaking down film and trying to get the audience involved as well. But this one's pretty special. We have Matt Waldman with us, who doesn't really need a big introduction. Everyone knows him. He's kind of, I would say, the godfather of the scouting community that we have. Um, I was lucky enough to meet Matt last year. I think I'm lucky enough to call him a friend too. So it's cool to always sit down and watch film with him because I love learning from him. So really, this is just, I'm selfish, and that's what it's going to be for me, just to learn from you, Matt, and ask you a bunch of questions. But we got Garrett here and Jarrett here and a big audience. So thanks for coming on. We're pumped to have you.
Oh man, I'm excited to do this as well, and I'm going to learn from you guys. It's always a learning experience when we get to watch film together, and you guys have such great experiences either playing or as well as working with teams or coaching, and so that's something that you're going to bring to the table that I always look forward to being able to learn from as well. So we have two backs that are going to be a lot of fun to watch today.
Yeah, yeah. So Garrett, how you doing tonight?
Dude, I'm doing good. We had the week off last week, and I'm not gonna lie, it kind of threw my week off because I look forward to these every week, and just getting to sit down with you guys and get to be a little nitpicky at times and try to pick apart what is overall a very talented class at both wide receiver and in the running back position as well. And so, these mid-tier guys are hard to separate. So this will be fun to, be able to help differentiate some of these second, third, fourth round pick type guys.
Right. And let's talk about why we were delayed. Jared, congratulations on the baby,
Absolutely.
Thank
Oh,
you.
dude, that's awesome.
My wife and I, we had another daughter last Tuesday, Carson.
Hashtag girl dad.
Yeah, hashtag girl dad. We welcomed her to the family. So super exciting. It's been pretty hectic around here. Didn't really take any time off work, so that's been crazy too. But this is a nice little break from all of that, something to look forward to, and especially having Matt on tonight, somebody that I've read so much of his work, watched so much of his work, and it's just fun to be on together, to watch some prospects together.
Well, this is going to be great, and I look forward to hearing your tales about playing zone defense now that you have multiple kids in the house.
So, but before we get started, Matt, I have a couple of questions, and I'm sure people will have some as well. You have so much knowledge in terms of just years of doing this, than a lot of people. What kind of advice would you give somebody that's just starting out, or maybe they have, about attempting to scout and to watch film? What kind of advice would you give them?
I think I would focus more on getting as good as you can at the smallest details of one area and not worry about whether you're going to make a living at this or get popular at this or build a following, because eventually one way or the other you're going to have to show competency at what you're doing, and then you're going to have to get a following. You're going to have to do it in one way or the other. It's much easier if you focus on learning the game, and I would say that it's also where it will help you understand whether or not you have the illness to do this, because I would say that pick one thing. Do you like running backs? Do you like wide receivers? Do you like linebackers? If you like linebackers, then I'd pick one of the best NFL linebackers. Well, say Bobby Wagner. I think he's a terrific NFL linebacker. Okay, so you pick Bobby Wagner and think about what sets him apart. Why is he good in pass coverage? Why is he good, at anticipating different plays? How does he move? What are the techniques that he's doing? And literally, I look at it as a game of like I Spy. Literally, like, note down everything you see that he reacts to on the field, and note where he's positioned, where he's not positioned. And again, we could be talking about running back or any other position, but where they're positioned, where they move, how the defense reacts to that, how the offense reacts to whatever, if it's a defensive player, and really just get down as much as you can and note down what questions you have. Like, what you don't get, what you don't know if you're sure about, and I think from there, that will give you enough information to start asking questions and searching for answers to those questions, and just keep doing that. And like, get really good at one position, because you're going to start seeing other things that, with everything else, it'll all start to piece together. But if
Mhm.
you can like really get confident in one position, then you move on to the next one,
Mhm.
and it may take you months. I mean, for me, I kind of toiled in anonymity for a number of years because they were like, well, who are you? You never played and you weren't a scout. So I wrote about fantasy football, and I learned about four positions, and it took me I'm still learning, but it's like this blackboard behind me literally was filled for the past 8 months on wide receiver stuff that I was learning from Drew Lieberman, the coach over at Don Bosco High School, who used to be the assistant wide receiver at Rutgers and was worked with Mohamed Sanu and Juwan Winfrey. And I went to his YouTube channel, and I've had him on my shows. I went to his YouTube channel and watched every video and literally wrote down every technique that he's shown on a video and compared it with my criteria for what I use for wide receiver play. And I'm reformatting my methods for using some of those things because I knew my stuff was outdated, and I've been doing this for 15 years, and I'm still I still have a ways to go. I mean, I know that probably in 3 years I'm going to want to change even more of that. So it's like getting that attitude. If you know that you still want to do it that way, like you can go through all that and go to that detail and get into that kind of mindset, and you like it still, then I think that that there's something for you to keep doing as a hobby, or if it's something that you really want to try.
Yeah, that's right. And I think just one thing, just from my experience, just I think people, you'd be surprised at, if you have those questions that you were talking about, Matt, if you reach out to people and you're respectful and you don't try and take up all of their time, you'd be shocked at who would reply to you. I mean, I've had Mike Leach email me back. I've had I remember I watched a play of Matt Forte at Tulane, and it was like a Statue of Liberty, like reverse run. I'm like, I just emailed the offensive coordinator and said, hey, I was just really wondering what this play was in the setup. And he detailed it for me and sent me email back. I was like, oh my gosh. And who am
That's
I?
awesome.
And that was forever ago. So, if you have those questions, feel free to reach out. There's a lot of people, I think, that they love this game like you do, and they want to help out. So that's great advice. I really like that one. Um, one other one before we start. So running back specific, what traits do you value the most in running backs, and why?
Really, I think of it as kind of like a trio of skills that kind of integrate together. It's the decision making of the running back, and it's the eyes, the brain, and the feet. So it's like the eyes to understand what the peripheral vision of what you see, being able to see flashes of color of defenders coming off blocks, and being able to see where the leverage is of those defenders in position, as well as being able to see you know where an arm is reaching for them, or where there's trash on the ground in terms of a fallen body or someone reaching up for their leg, so that they can see all of these things as they're moving, and it's coming from different origin points, and then having the kind of the awareness in their head to process how to form a solution. And oftentimes that includes staying disciplined to the run scheme, the run blocking, and understanding your run blocking, knowing like if it's a zone play, understanding the three options that you probably have, and understanding, when you see these different points of stimuli that you're visually catching your eye, how to maintain discipline within the scheme, because when you do that, you actually create opportunities for you to gain more yards and to do it in a more efficient way more often than not. And then the third is the footwork, because the footwork to me is kind of like the technical tools that execute everything you see in process. And if your feet are in concert with what your eyes see, and that link is your brain, obviously, is that then you have enough footwork technique to execute all the different types of footwork moves that a running back has. If you have those three things aligned, you may not have to, you're at worst, you're Devin Singletary. You're not fast, you're short, you're not very quick, but you anticipate everything and you perform to a level where you can be an NFL starter or committee back of note and be productive despite the fact that you may not be a top end athlete. Peyton Barber's an example of a guy that's kind of like that too, who's, he's quicker than he's fast, and he's not as slow as Singletary, but he's that kind of guy that, is a very smart runner. And we may look at him from a fantasy perspective and say, oh, whatever, he's just a guy. But from a football standpoint, when we're talking about studying players, you look at that guy and go, well, he held off a number of guys picked higher than he was and climbed his way up the depth chart, and he's still relevant for that team. And they know that when they ask him to get some yards for them, that he's going to get those yards for them. And that's why Frank Gore's been in the league forever, and he's been teaching tape. And so that trio of things for me is that. How about you?
Yeah, no, I think, well, you were saying that, and I always think of the approach to the line, which I think is kind of what you're saying is really important. I used to think making people miss was big, but I think the approach to the line of scrimmage and keeping your offense, I think, ahead of the chains is like, so right now, that player to me is screaming. I was like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's going to make so many positive plays by his approach to the line of scrimmage and being in position to take advantage and not rushing it. Because there's some players that you can see, and I think you describe it in a better way than I can, in terms of they kind of panic and they're not patient and they freak out a little bit with their feet, and it sets everything up poorly instead of having that confidence. And you can see that in players' feet as well. So I think those are things I've liked more recently. When I used to do this, you think you put other things like, oh, what's their speed, and now I don't even care about that,
Right. Yeah.
So this is Jared right now scrolling through Matt's site. We need the rookie scouting portfolio. Everyone should have heard about this before. If you haven't, it's incredible. I'm not sure how long it would take one person to read the whole thing, Matt. If we're being honest, it would be can they get through it in a year? I'm not sure. That's a lot of pages, because if you really want to study it, it's going to take, you can't just read one page. You have to study it to get through. So it's a humongous resource. And I like that you're very transparent with everything, with what you see and why you see it. And I think that really helps people scout as well. So then when they watch that game, they can put what they see and what you see together and see where maybe they're off. And that might help with some of those questions that you had said. So I can't recommend it enough. I think it's incredible.
Thank you.
If you guys haven't seen that, or Matt's, his YouTubes of talking about players, like, it's just a huge, huge library of resources you guys need to check out.
Well, I appreciate it. And certainly, it's my learning process. It's kind of how I'm learning and still going about it. And, you'll probably read about 500 of those pages. The other 600 to 700 are really supporting information and reference data, like how I define everything, and I give you a full glossary. And then I show you all the reports that I did, on those players. But, the rest of it, there's a good hefty amount of information in there that you will want to read, and you can, and it's all bookmarked for you. So you can just click on the players that you want to look at that time. And, so it makes good reading when you have, 15 minutes here and 15 minutes there kind of thing.
I've always had the idea, and I haven't done this yet, Matt, to all the publications I've made to have them printed and like bound. Have you ever thought about doing that with yours? Think of like,
oh geez,
you need like an industrial grade
and like how big of a bookshelf you would need.
Freaking for Harry Potter,
like 1,000 pages.
I like forests. I like forests, and I don't want to, and with my luck, karma would mean that I would be walking in a park one day and 2 to 3 trees would probably just throw themselves down on me, and that would be the end of me. If that was, if that was like, if there was any kind of divine justice that that's what I was doing and selling them like that. I tried once to do some of that, because I was trying to share it with somebody, and it was just kind of untenable. So PDF. I love PDFs.
They're wonderful.
Yeah.
For this is
You
great.
can read them on
go.
your phone too. Hey Matt, what's the story of the birds here?
Yeah. So the crow is really the thing. I just found this photo that I absolutely loved, and because to me, crows are very clever. They're very, as we've learned over time, that they're very intelligent animals that are problem solvers. They have a sense of humor. They like to play. They kind of work together in groups, and they're good at kind of identifying enemies or friends, and kind of working with each other to do that. So they're kind of like scouts of in a certain sense, because they look for characteristics to identify. They recognize faces, and they understand the actions of people who don't behave well with them, and those that do. um,
Interesting.
yeah, so there's all of that, and then there's the whole mythology around them too. There's a lot of positives that we don't always know about with them, but because they're usually associated with the negative. And there's the whole, you heard the term eating crow, but it's a humble term too. So there's a little humility involved with that too, because any of us who are watching film, we're all going to be eating crow,
Yeah.
pretty much one time or another.
I bet you guys
We get reminded of it.
didn't know you come to the stream and learn about some crows tonight.
I'm sure they're ready to watch football now.
Yeah, so let's get into the tape here a little bit. We're gonna start off with Lamical Perine. We got Anthony McFarland coming up after him. First on the docket here is versus LSU. Ooh, let me turn the volume down here. All right. So, guys,
if you
new
wanna take
feature here.
The lead, Matt, you can do that if you want. But yeah, we just kind of talk through anything that we see. We can play things back. So
That's cool.
it's pretty chill.
I learned how to super slow mo it on Vimeo, by the way.
Look at
nice.
you.
Look at that.
There we go.
What buttons are those, Jared?
You have to hold shift and then use the arrow keys.
Oh, nice. Okay. It's different than YouTube.
Yeah.
All right, so this was one we could replay, just kind of take a look. And it looks like we're seeing here some sort of a counter, possibly. I didn't really look quick enough yet, but it looks like you've got a pulling guard and maybe either a counter or power, but it looks like counter. And the leverage, it looks like he kind of read the outside guy. I mean, I would love to hear what you guys think, but it looks like he read kind of the linebacker coming up to that right edge and decided it was time to work back inside.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he's working back inside leverage, that his pulling guard, wasn't able to, get a position where he could like work back inside that guard like that. And that's a hard thing to do, is to kind of cut back on a gap play.
Right. I mean, this is one where I think maybe he got nervous too quickly. If he was just a little half second more patient, he would have came at least outside of there and got back to at least the line of scrimmage, if not a big play. Because if he goes between those two, he's got a shot.
I think you're absolutely right, because it's that lesson of maintaining your line. If he took another 2 steps forward, maybe, and had confidence that he could cut inside number 8, look where he sent, that safety or that defensive back at the 28, right there. That defensive back's well outside.
Watch it again, full speed here.
Keep it in your right arm, Perine. Come on.
So he split out wide here up top. They split him out wide a lot, I noticed when watching him.
He is one of the he's not a huge name, but when it comes to some of the backs in this class, he's a much more natural receiver than some of the other guys.
Yeah, that's a great point about him.
Yeah, 40 receptions. I mean, that's, surprising when you look at, he's played all 4 years at Florida. His earlier years, he didn't get quite that number. He always had a few. He's battled with Jordan Scarlett, but 40 is a pretty big number for college.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's counter.
Good
Yeah,
patience. Good patience there.
For sure. And especially where he has to kind of cross the quarterback's face and then work back behind the lead blocks like that.
Yeah. pauses and
And
lets
it's
his blocks develop.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that was the
it's-
tight end that came around, isn't that?
Pitts.
Yeah. Yeah, 84.
Yep.
And he does a nice job there where when he changes direction, when he's in the backfield, you see that when he's in the backfield, he doesn't really jump or leap. It's just kind of a switch or a pivot with his feet. So he's efficient with that change of direction. And that's so important when there's, a lot of traffic getting backed up into the, near the exchange point.
Mhm. And his shoulders are square too. That's kind of reminds me of Trent Richardson back at Alabama. He was really a shoulder square type of a player.
And you can see why that's important on this play. I mean, if he didn't have his shoulders square to begin that play, he doesn't bounce off this contact right there.
Yep. He does a good job of that.
That's one thing I really enjoy seeing out of running backs is, you see some guys that they're uber talented, but their feet go dead at contact at times. And being able to see him still continue to chop those legs, churn those legs, his feet go dead there. He's probably getting brought down. But continue to churn those legs. That's a good sign.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, you see him here. He continues to head towards where I think he needs to on this play, where the soft spot is, even though, number 8's coming in through there, and there's another defender who's already come in through there a little bit earlier.
Yeah, good. Gets his pads down low. He's the lower guy here.
Yeah, for sure. And you see, and like Garrett noted, I mean, he keeps his feet moving. He attacks first with the pads. And I mean, you can see he has functional burst. I mean, he has NFL caliber burst. It's so he definitely has a place in the league.
Yeah, he lost some weight prior to this last year. He was like high 220s, and now he's back down to like 215s. So I think that's kind of helped him a little bit in that area.
It's a tough catch there.
Yeah, for sure.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not many running backs in this class that can make a catch like that. I can
That's
name
true.
a few, but
There's a few receivers that can't make that catch.
Quite a few.
yeah.
Because, I mean, away from your body like that on a slant, and you're going to take a hit.
Yep.
He made that look easy.
That's Patrick Queen in the middle there. He's a player too.
Yeah, no doubt.
Now, one quick question that I have for you, Matt, when we see these guys, getting ready to make that jump to the NFL, a lot of times we're talking about, different blocking schemes, and a lot of NFL teams use a myriad of different blocking schemes within their playbook, but you have some that are more traditional zone, some that are more traditional gap. Does that factor for you? Which player goes to what specific scheme, or do you think that's a little bit overblown? Most backs can fit into most schemes regardless of how it goes. Where do you stand with all of that?
I'm still in the standpoint, maybe I'm old fashioned, but I'm still at the standpoint where it's if you only run gap, you probably may have a little bit of work to do because there's a lot of zone schemes, and a lot of teams use a healthy amount of zone, whereas few teams are like heavily weighted till gap. The Bills, the Chargers, the Colts seem to be pretty good in that regard. So, but it takes some time to learn that. We saw Tevin Coleman. It took a few years for him to kind of develop in that regard. And we saw that Miles Sanders struggled a little bit last year early on because he wasn't great with zone runs. And so they gave him more gap, and he looked pretty good, as that started to go on. So that's an opposite style of running. Like you have to account for things, and you have to read things kind of in an opposite fashion. You have to kind of set things up in opposite fashion. And if you're not used to doing that, it shows up. A quick story I'll give is CJ Procise. I did an analysis on CJ Procise a number of years ago at Notre Dame, and his brother contacted me. And his brother was like, I just want to know if you know any running back trainers that could work with my brother. Because he saw your video where you were critiquing his work in non-gap scheme plays. And he took it to the Notre Dame running back coach, and the coach said, he's dead on. You do have to learn these things. Like, these are going to have to happen. And I recommended him to a guy by the name of Chad Spann, who was a player who played for a number of different teams and coaches in Indiana now, and was in the CFL and the NFL. And Chad's written some things for me talking about the difference between zone and gap schemes, and he worked with CJ pre-draft to kind of help him get a primer on the footwork and what he was going to have to continue working on.
Very cool.
It wouldn't be an episode with you, man, if we didn't hear Chad Span.
Of course not. He's my buddy, man.
He's good too.
Yeah, he taught me a lot.
So not a lot to work with here, to be honest with you.
I would love to go back to the previous play, if you don't mind, where he blocks. There's a play like I think before. Block. Yeah, right there. Yeah. Just to get a chance to see. Yeah. Kinda. I mean, hey, he tries to get across there. I mean, he's a little too high, but the fact that he's that high on a big guy like that's not bad.
Right. And anyone inside leg, which is what you need to go.
Yeah.
If you're going to cut.
And positive from this running play here is, he gets his legs caught up here at the line of scrimmage, but he still manages to get a couple yards because he's keeping his legs moving.
Yep. And that jump stop wasn't bad either. That's not a bad jump stop either.
Right.
Ooh, look at that.
And he noticed he really didn't have anywhere to go here, but he just puts his head down, goes north and south, and gets a couple.
That's a great point. And then go back to the jump stop one more time, because look how he kind of jumps forward to the jump stop, but then leaps away from 91. A lot of guys you'll see jump stop into the defender and go like a couple yards, but he only takes a yard and then jumps away quickly. So you see the awareness and the good position with his hands there. So that whole vision idea of being able to process quickly and make that contact and be aware enough with your feet, like, I know I jumped into that penetration. Now I have to jump away. And you see a lot of guys like Kenyon Drake I used to joke that, he's done a lot better, but you've seen him cut into the back sides of his blockers and knock himself backwards, onto his butt. In Miami doing that, so.
That's one of my issues with Cam Akers this year, is I feel like he's not quick at processing if the play isn't designed how it should be.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's a fair assessment about him. All right.
Surprised he got 2 yards there, to be honest. Just a lot of junk.
Yeah, but it's nice that he continues to kind of go outside and he's trying to get those linebackers to flow, and then he gets that kind of backside crease.
Mm-hmm. Good patience again.
Yeah.
Smart. That's why I like Perine. I think he has so many tools in his toolbox where he's not great at any one thing, but he's good at a lot of things here. And I think an NFL team's going to like that because he can just do a lot. You put him on the field, it's like, well, we can't not throw, or we can't not run this play. He can kind of do it all.
What's his size again?
He is, where do I have him here?
Is he 215?
I think so.
I think he's in that range, yeah. Let me look. I've got him somewhere. Oh, there he is. Yeah, 5'10", 216.
That's good size.
Yeah.
It's a good cutback. It's interesting that it looked like he planted on his inside foot to cut back in, which is a little unorthodox, but.
Right there?
Yeah. Oh, no. All right. He got his outside foot. I thought he was planting on his inside foot, which I was trying to figure out how he made that happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's that guy to me that's like, I think, versus draft nicks or fantasy people may like him less than the full draft nick crowd. And I've rated him lower, but what I've told people is like, he's the guy that the NFL is going to draft earlier because his upside may not be great, but they know exactly what they're getting out of this guy. Mm-hmm. And if they need him to play, he's going to play well, but he's just not a guy that they're going to say, we feel comfortable about you being a starter long-term with us. Mm-mm. But he could have a 10-year career with like 3 different teams and maybe even have like a couple seasons with 1,000 yards, just because you look at what he does. It's everything's pretty good and can get better if, even just, eyes on a swivel, being able to, make that nice little block on that quarterback run and find the open man there.
You run that one back. Yeah.
Yeah. That one there.
Now, this one I have a little bit of an issue with. I think he did a little too much dancing there. You have 1 yard to go. I would have much rather seen him lower the shoulders and just punch it in. I don't like seeing a lot of dancing around the goal line personally.
I agree, and he does it so early. He doesn't get close enough to the line to really set up anything. So like he's tipping off to the defenders who are not blocked where he's going. Like he could have gone another 2 steps
Yeah.
and
approach
then
the
made
line.
his move. Yeah. And then maybe he has that open crease to cut back. And that's the difference between him, a guy like we just talked about, Chubb, or Frank Gore.
Yep. You have to press the hole to make the linebackers flow.
There's a play.
Too.
Making a
this
play
is
for your
amazing.
team there.
Well,
Yeah.
But this is 4th and goal. You got to make a
Yeah.
play, and I think it's a great play for the quarterback to even get the play off if you watch.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
he gets this
Yeah.
pass
Right?
off. So
Yeah.
Give your guys a chance. 4th down.
Yeah, just heads up. And kind of nice position because he knows he's like kind of leaping back for that ball. I mean, he doesn't drift too much at that point. It was nice.
We haven't touched on a lot of the questions in here yet. Matt, if you're okay with answering
Please.
here, one of the guys asked, who do you think is the top back in this class?
I'm a J.K. Dobbins fan. I think
My dude. Yes. Yes. Take that, Nick.
Now, let me say this, and I don't mean this just because Nick's my bud,
Yeah.
but I've said this in a number of places. The best pure runner with the ball in his hand is Jonathan Taylor.
Yes.
But the best all around back in my eyes in terms of if we're not
For
looking for a
fantasy.
specific team, run, catch, block, scheme independent. I think Dobbins gets the edge in that case.
Matt, you just moved up in my book. Just moved up.
So we're J.K. Dobbins admirers, eh?
That's right. That's
Well,
right.
That TCU game from last year was the first one I watched, and I was just like, I was so impressed with his footwork. I was so impressed with how he moved through traffic and how he can make some of those micro movements to kind of avoid defenders and process information.
Yeah, very
then-
elusive.
Yes. He kind of reminds me of like a faster Ray Rice, when Ray Rice was good back in the day. And I think that he has a shot to become a really good player. He can be a little undisciplined at times, but
For sure. A little inconsistent on some things, especially in pass protection.
yeah,
Nice run.
yeah. That's,
The ability
Oh,
to make the
yeah.
first guy miss.
and look at that little turn, just that little turn of the upper body. That's like a nice little micro movement there where he moves the ball away.
Mm-hmm.
Ezekiel Elliott's just killer at that. He is so good at making that quick little move like that, and that's why he often turns tough losses into gains, because he can keep defenders from getting a reach on him that should have gotten one.
No, one thing, if you play back again, so some backs, we talked about the freaking out, some backs will just get out of the way as quick as they can to avoid him, but then they'll run into this corner that's coming off the edge. So you wonder if he processes, I only need
Step
to move
ahead.
a little bit, a half a man maybe, and then go forward so I can avoid both guys. You wonder what they think. That's what I think. Because I know some guys will completely jump cut there, and then they'll just get tackled for no gain.
And
That's
I
the
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
No, you do it.
No, that's the chess versus checkers thing in my mind with some of the processing for these guys. Some of those guys are only one move, but then when there's guys that can string moves together because they were able to kind of see what was happening as opposed to just what was right in front of them, but a couple moves ahead, like you do in chess. And so, when you see guys that can process that, is always a plus.
Go back to the play and look at just the pre-snap look of it, because this was something that I know Dan Hatman liked to point out a lot at the Scouting Academy. And you'll see, you look at from the right side of the center that you essentially have, like, I guess 4 guys on that side. And then maybe you could count the 5th if you count the Mike, who's kind of close enough to that hash, but let's just say 4. And he knows that kind of that bubble in terms of where there's, that free area between the defensive end and defensive tackle is going to get filled by that linebacker. Looks like number 8 there, Queen. And then you also still have that other defender off the edge outside of that defensive end who's also going to be, he looks like he's playing kind of tight. So I wouldn't be surprised if Perine's, obviously assessing that pre-snap and looking and going, this is where we're running. So what do I have to account for? And I know my man here on the wing might be able to take this guy, but he might know him well enough to go, I'm going to have to be tight if I bounce outside this bubble where the defender gets through.
That's a great point.
What I like about Perine so
ahead.
far is he understands who he is. Like, he's not trying to always beat guys to the edge because he's not some super fast running back. He gets north and south when he needs to get north and south, and he gets positive yards. And that's
a great point, because and that's, I think, key about a lot of backs is that they don't know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
They think they're super stud athletes all the time.
And Matt, I know, I mean, I'm on this show, I talk about it all the time, but I know you don't hear it, but I'm anti David Montgomery despite being a Bears fan, because David Montgomery still thinks he's the most athletic guy on the field, and he's not.
He saw that graphic. He knows.
Yeah.
He's Frankenstein out there, man.
and you're right. He probably doesn't know who he is for sure. I mean, I think it's very symptomatic of that. Yeah, I mean, he gets downhill well on that. Just kind of sets that up.
Gets his pads down too.
The more I watch him, and I liked the potential of Jordan Scarlett early on going to Florida. I mean, he's a great athlete out of high school, and he got into a little bit of trouble. But the more I watch Perine, the more I'm like, why didn't they give him more touches in that offense versus Scarlett? Because he I feel like they would have won more games, or they would have been better. So, but that's a concern then. If he doesn't get, he never got 1,000 yards there, in a season. So, you wonder if the coaches didn't trust him, or, what the reason was.
Could it also be just as like a lot of the SEC teams there? Nice catch and nice transition. Look at the transition after the catch.
Beautiful.
And how quickly he gets upfield.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't waste any time, and that's such an underrated thing. And the way that he even transitions to face the ball so that he's turning downfield.
It was kind of thrown a little bit above and behind him. That's tough.
Another great catch on that angle.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, a lot of the SEC guys, I think they get recruited in a way they say, listen, you're going to play, and we're going to find a role for you. And I wonder if that's part of it too.
No, maybe. Yeah. I wish he had the ball in the other hand here.
We have a question from the chat here. Matt, what's the most important non-athletic trait that you look for?
Non-athletic trait that I look for. I mean, it's an underlying thread thing, but to me, again, it's about integrating the skills that you have, like knowing how to use them in very different ways. And so it's processing, it's processing the field and knowing how to do that. And it's kind of like, it's an intuitive type of thing, because, there's things that you're not coached to do, but you're coached maybe to do 3 or 4 different types of techniques, and then a situation comes up where you have to figure out a way to combine those 3 or 4 things, and it's not something that you've practiced. So I know that's not an easy answer, but it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it was a good block there. I mean, the end came in the ref, the handoff, and he still got in the way. That was
you can just tell that he has high awareness. He has a high football IQ.
Mm-hmm.
Just there's little subtle things that he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, even that block is nice, just to kind of squeeze him off into into his teammate there, so he could get some help if needed.
That's why I think, you were saying, Matt, an NFL team's going to draft him higher because they can trust him.
Yeah,
they know what he can do.
I think he's an early 3rd-day pick. I mean, I think he could be a 4th or 5th round pick in this class. Whereas there are other guys who are more athletic than he, but probably will be 6th or 7th round.
So just to pump something that just released this evening, we released our nerd scores tonight, and basically what it is Matt, I'm sure you're not aware of it, but basically we had several analysts kind of watching these tapes, watching these films of these players, and then they would break down all of the individual attributes and give it a numerical grade. And then ultimately that way we had kind of a score sheet that we could release to everybody just based on their physical attributes, the tape stuff that we see, versus, once landing spot and all that kind of stuff gets, it gets messy. So these kind of lock in place once the draft happens. But as of right now for our nerd score, Lamical Perine comes in as our 11th ranked running back with a score of 66.3. However, he is only 0.18 away from being our 9th ranked running back. So he's kind of in a little tier there.
That's crazy.
Between 9 and 11.
That's cool.
Who's
That's
he
cool
right
that
around?
you guys have doing that.
Yeah, it should be neat. It'll be nice for us later on to be able to go back and say, 3 years ago we had this guy ranked with this numerical grade, but I'm telling you, in this class we have 3 guys that would top that guy, or something like that. So,
who's he around? We got Antonio Gibson,
Xavier Jones, Lamical Perine, and Michael Warren are all kind of right in that same territory.
Nice.
Solid backs. Gibson has high. He's tough to grade. He's got a high ceiling, I think.
I still know what position he plays.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Me neither. I thought it was going to be receiver, and by the time I finished studying, I was back at running back.
Yeah, I just thought he made more plays at running back. He looked more natural there.
And I think as evaluators, we're always going to be prone to screwing up how to grade a player like that or Tony Pollard because the low number of touches that they had.
Lynn Bowden's tough as well.
Yeah.
He's all over the field.
Yeah, he is. I agree.
He's from
Nice
Cleveland.
contact balance, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, swing out to the left.
Matt, how do you compare some of these running backs as far as, where does competition come into it? Because obviously we have to grade into each player individually on their skill set. But does a guy playing in the SEC against those defenses of the Big Ten versus playing, in the MAC or, the Sun Belt, does that play any role factor for you? Or is it, I just look at the individual player and I kind of ignore the rest?
I would say I'm more towards the latter, but I do account for the former in the sense that, you want to see a guy's strength or contact balance against top end competition. You want to see, it's easier for you to see whether the guy actually has speed and acceleration when they're facing top end athletes. But I'm still kind of waiting for the combine for verification because, to me, trying to guess the speed of a player, I feel like I'm guessing the weight at a carnival, so it's, I don't think I'm very good at that. So I'd rather just let the times tell me that. And then I can do some investigative work if I think the start was bad or, there was some sort of issue that didn't match the field. But I look for individual skills. And I think if you isolate them enough, you can account for, it doesn't matter whether the competition was good or bad or the stats were good or bad.
Yeah, Jared was going for a play there as a pass pro, and it was such a big gap. Yeah, this play here that, to me, he steps up and you want him to attack there, but he can't lunge because it's the biggest gap you've ever seen. If he misses, his quarterback's screwed. So I think he steps up and he's like, okay, I just need to catch and get in his way because that's essentially like a 3 gap area.
He did his job.
That's a good point. And that's something that I think a lot of people miss when they evaluate, where they feel like they have to have a definitive answer and say, well, his technique wasn't good here.
Yeah, he ducked his head a little bit.
Yeah. But at the same time, that ducking of the head might have also occurred because he had to stop so quickly. We'd probably have to look for other exposures to see. And I don't remember what he does oftentimes as a blocker right off the bat, if that's a tendency of his or not. I'll look up in my notes in a bit.
Yeah. But, looks like they made a second half adjustment of chipping the end. Keeps chipping that end.
How many hours did the RSP take this year, Matt?
You mean just in March?
Yeah. When does the process of the RSP for the next seasons begin?
It's, I've watched a number of guys for next year already while I was doing it this year because I didn't know whether they were coming out or not. So I probably already have about 40 or 45 guys that I've watched a good bit of tape on. And then I'll probably, I used to start in I used to start in July probably and took a good bit of time off, but I have a feeling this year I'm going to be starting probably after the draft immediately.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Sounds like you're going to be busy.
I am, but I'm trying to cut my process so that or make it more efficient so that the March isn't as crazy as it's been, and I think I've figured that out. So I'm hoping that I'll get more sleep and be able to take care of myself a little bit better these days. Rather than trying to write 500 pages in 1 month, which is what I've been doing.
I get that LSU has a pretty good defense, but there's not much dog in him at the goal line.
Yeah, go back to that.
Oh, the buffer.
The
Gotta go all the way
dreaded.
Why is it taking so long? Well,
this is when I get up and go to the bathroom when I'm working.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
So close.
I don't know why this isn't going.
Is this the pass play here? They did this is the pass play here where they do the Nick Foles
let's
play.
move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
No worries.
We did have a
do you wanna
question from the chat. Phil asked if we could get Matt's top 5 backs in the class.
Sure. And by the way, I don't think I had anything I had Perine kind of as a high-end committee caliber blocker, which means that like he's not far from being a starting caliber blocker in the league. So I'm sure there's just some things I got to look and see what he cleaned up. My top 5 quickly, I have Dobbins number 1, just because of that all-around work. Taylor, I think, is the most talented pure runner who just has to continue to work on being more scheme versatile. I think he's got some potential already, and we've seen some evidence of that. And he just has to protect that football a lot more. And kind of, and I've joked this because his pass protection, he's kind of like that masseuse, that professional masseuse who doesn't want to come home and give a massage to his or her spouse, when it comes to pass blocking. He has work to do there. DeAndre Swift is my 3rd back, and he's a little bit behind Dobbins and Taylor. I like AJ Dillon. Yeah. And so I have him 4th. And then there's a very small gap between my 5th, 6th, and 7th players.
Mm-hmm.
But Zach Moss is tied for 5th with Cam Akers on my board. Okay. And I know we talked that we might have some conversation about AJ Dillon at some point. If we want, we can talk about that because it's always fun to see where we all disagree. So
yeah, because I love that top 5, and I'm very curious to hear what you have to say about Dillon, because he was a guy I came away with very unimpressed overall. But I've watched you work your magic more than once, so I'm willing to be persuaded. But so far I'm not there. We don't have to do it the second. Maybe we can save it for the very end.
Okay.
Once we've got through the tape, but I would love to have that hear your takes and your reasoning on that. And I know you broke it down a little bit in your RSP, but
sure, we can do that later.
Typically we watch 2 games of prospect, but we are running a little bit behind. What's the night look like for you guys? Are you guys want to move
we hop over to McFarland real quick?
Do you feel like we're good with that? If you guys do, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, let's hear a little McFarland. I mean, because this is how it's going to be. Because we're going to have good conversation throughout. So I don't think we're going to have our regular show.
Okay.
We'll move on to McFarland. There's plenty of film on Perine in the film room. If you guys care to do any extra work for you.
The one thing I have a question on with McFarland, just with Matt quickly, is so I'm not sure that he was healthy this whole year, Matt. I mean, when I was watching him last year, I saw much more
I agree.
explosiveness and confidence. I mean, he still will run through a brick wall. He is a fearless, smaller back, but I didn't see quite the same back as I saw at the end of the year last year, whether that's confidence or injury. Is that what you saw as well?
I would agree. I did see that. And that's one of those things that makes him difficult to evaluate, because Are you going to get more of last year? Or are you going to get more of what we saw, in 2019?
Mm-hmm.
More on the conspiracy theory side, I did find it interesting that both him and Leak came out when I thought both of them could have used another year. So I wondered if there was something going on there at Maryland that was a little weird.
That was a beautiful transition right there out of the exchange. You notice how he just takes out one step and opens his hips like that, and just that point of that right toe to get downhill. Very efficient play right there.
Yeah.
And he's an excellent gap play runner. Like, to me, this is where he needs to be. Like, if you put him in gap, I think he can give you a lot.
Watch how explosive he is out of that broken tackle.
Zone, I think he would struggle because I think it's too many decisions to make.
It is. He paralyzes himself. He gets paralyzed. He's kind of like Bishop Sankey would get paralyzed with zone decisions. And I think that he's kind of that way when it comes to zone.
Right. And it gets magnified near the goal line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, for anyone that hasn't seen or researched a lot of McFarland, he is not Booger McFarland's son.
Because I was going to ask if he had a booster seat or a little chair next to Booger's chair on Monday Night Football.
Oh, that thing was awful. The Booger Mobile.
Yeah. This is nice in terms of him working outside.
I agree.
How did he weigh in at 208? That's what I'm still trying to figure out. Whatever program he's on, some other guys need to get on, because there's no way he was playing anywhere close to that in my opinion.
I think he's got a pretty thick lower body.
I think you look at him and Dobbins and Edwards-Helaire, they're all within a couple pounds of each other. It seems as Benjamin,
I was surprised to see Perine at 215, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I think McFarland looks bigger than Perine.
McFarland runs hard. That's the one thing I came up with. He's got a little bit of that Chris Johnson toughness to him that you don't expect from a guy you think is smaller.
Yeah. Man. And that's some fearless burst right there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he sees that crease and it's like, okay, I think I can beat that safety on the field side.
Mm-hmm. And, which is hard to do.
Yeah. Well, and he nearly does it. Yeah, very well blocked.
He hits it though.
And that's right there. You go back to it. I love, one of my biggest things, Matt, that I like to, you asked this earlier, is I love the small, subtle cuts with running backs. Right here, he gets through here and he makes this small, subtle move to the outside. It's hard to see, but he widens by a half yard right there.
Right there.
Yard.
Yeah.
That's so valuable in terms of space for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's a good point.
Yes. And that's a nice little stiff arm there to ward off. There it is.
Yep. And that widening that you're talking about is the difference between him getting tackled there and not. Because if he doesn't widen there, he's going down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He also broke his leg his senior year, which made him redshirt. So, he's so tough because we just don't know what the real McFarland is. We didn't see a bunch of him early at Maryland, and then he got hurt this last year. So,
yeah, and it's one of those situations that you just wonder if, too, where he fits. I mean, most people would say common sense wise, a gap team's going to want to take him, and I think that's probably the case. But some team, eventually, there might be someone who falls in love with him and says, "We can make him a zone runner," and then that's when you go, "Oh, Lord, I hope that he lands in the right spot."
Mm-hmm.
You ever see anybody run straight into a brick wall before?
4 times. He does it again here, doesn't he?
Oh.
Yep.
This is like Raquel Armstead last year.
Oh yeah.
That dude had 1 gear, and it was as hard as I could straight ahead.
Oh,
Hey, Nick, what Rams player does he remind you of?
Oh yeah, where's our weekly Rams comp?
Slow this one down if you can.
Okay. From this angle?
Yeah. Like, this is where you kind of look at this and go, all right, he's got 75 here. Maybe he can kind of stay on that line of 75 as long as possible so that he can move that defender out of that lane, because he kind of cuts back maybe a step or two early, but he would have had to change his footwork entirely to probably on approach to even get there. And then you're like asking him to be a lot more patient than maybe what you'd be used to on this kind of a play. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, because the other The other one is he could get skinny potentially. You know what I mean? By slowing it down and getting skinny. But I mean, when you take the context of the play, which I think is the big part of that. I mean, it's 4th and goal, and he's probably like, I have to run as hard as I can to get in here and, missile myself in. And he probably was just too impatient, honestly.
Garrett, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And you see, you see a little bit of a lane there to the left of who is that 8? What I don't see what number, the guy that's circled. You see a little bit of a lane there to the left, but I think he saw it too late to be able to get all the way over in time, and he ended up getting hit pretty head on instead of getting a glancing blow to the side right off the butt of his guard there, or cutting it all the way back. He kind of got caught in the in between.
Yeah, and I don't know if he could have pressed it as hard to that right as he could have, because there was a defender coming through there late, and they already had a push to that side. So, yeah, it was it was a good play on Temple's part.
Yep. Jared, to answer your question, I'm gonna say, ooh, look at that. Sorry, we gotta watch this.
That was sexy cut.
It's a good reaction.
Yeah, it is. It's a good job of reading the leverage.
Mm-hmm. I'll say one of my favorite Rams running backs of lately, and I'll say Zach Stacy.
Zach Stacy?
I love Zach Stacy out of Vanderbilt.
No, I have no issue with that. But
he doesn't remind me of
comps.
him.
I mean,
he doesn't comp.
You're better than that, Nick.
Matt, I'm just having fun.
It's like every episode, Nick has a old school Rams player comp for somebody.
It happened like 3 or 4 weeks in a row randomly, and then
it just became a
thing.
Well, I like it. Maybe you can pull out Wendell Tyler a little bit later, or McCutcheon.
Matt will appreciate this one, Garrett, because you guys don't know this one. Who is my Andy Isabella comp, Garrett, that I talked about?
Oh, when you're talking about Chad Beebe?
No, Don Beebe.
Don Beebe.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good one.
Isn't that a good? Aren't they like the same body and how they move?
Yeah.
See, Matt appreciates it.
See, and Isabella grew up where I did in Cleveland, Ohio.
Wow.
Yeah, I would have gone to that high school if I didn't move. Is the one that he went to. It's kind of funny to see that he was from that neighborhood.
I wonder what they're going to do with him there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if he can be more efficient with his routes. Like, I think if he can be more efficient with his routes, we'll see a lot more of him. But that's going to be the question.
Man, is he explosive.
Look, nice pad level, feet moving. You get the knees up. Probably had to gotten the knees up on that too.
That's why, like, he has these traits, and you're like, man, there's some really good instinctual football play there and physicalness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's just healthy.
Yeah, staying healthy and getting him in situations where, like, obviously this is a straight ahead kind of play for him. So if you give him these situations where he's kind of getting downhill fast, give him a nice track to build up that acceleration quickly, he's tough.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good leg drive.
And just low to the ground.
Yeah, it doesn't give the defender much room to hit either. Right here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a nice... At the very least, he gives you some scat back qualities.
Mm-hmm.
That second cut was kind of fun, too. That second little dip to the outside.
And what I like, too, is that he doesn't go straight to the outside. He widens and then evaluates. And then widens again. Yeah. Which maximizes yardage.
Kind of stair steps his way to the outside.
So, Matt, I hear you talk about micro movements a lot. Can you kind of explain that to the viewers, what you mean exactly?
Sure. It's kind of a catch-all term for very subtle shifts in the body. It can be how you lift the leg or turn your hip or dip a shoulder or and elude contact, where, like, maybe you're making a cut away from a defender to your left and then a defender to the right comes in, and you see, while you're making that jump cut away to your left, that you see them, like, raise their right leg just away enough to avoid that defender's reach, or that they can turn the shoulder just enough where they're tucking the ball away so that the defender can't wrap their bicep or elbow. It's just those little moves that what ends up happening is that that it gains them 2 to 3 more yards oftentimes because they make a defender who had an angle miss in a very tight space.
I think J.K. Dobbins and Jonathan Taylor both do a really good job of that.
Yes.
Even
Well,
with
one guy-
McFarland here, this is a little punch step outside, like Nick was saying, to widen himself. Consider that like a micro movement.
Sure.
Would
Yeah,
you
exactly.
say that Javid Best did that a lot, Matt? That's one guy that comes to mind when you talk about those movements. He did some of
what
that stuff
could've
just
been?
so specially that I was like, wow.
Yeah, and that was so sad that
Yeah.
that the head injuries cut short his career. He was a fantastic player.
So
He's
fun
a
to
way
watch.
better runner than I think people give him credit for. Like, he's a fantastic athlete, but man, the way he ran was like special.
Yeah, I loved him out of school.
Mm-hmm.
Really disappointed that
You-
happened.
Do you remember that UCLA run where he like, it's like a 90-yard touchdown run and he cuts it back and then there's an outside corner and he goes north and south to bait the DB more and then goes outside of him? Do you remember that?
I don't, but I would love to see that again.
I'll send you a link after the
Okay.
show.
Okay.
It's just like, that's just such advanced running. It's great to watch.
Yeah, the two guys that were most disappointing due to injuries that were so fun to watch in college and turned out to be good pros before they got hurt and just your short careers got cut short were Best and Austin Collie. I was a big Austin Collie fan. I thought he could have had a huge career. I thought he could have been what Julian Edelman has become, and even more.
David Wilson comes to mind as a guy where his career got cut too short too.
So let's take a look at this. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, I mean, nice blocking up front. I mean, jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, he sees it, hits it,
Yeah.
gets 7 yards, 6.
And what you wonder about him, maybe, and because he's such a good gap runner, is that on a play like this, could he alter pace a little bit more and maybe slow down a bit to set up this defender who comes up and maybe be able to make him miss more if he wasn't going a million miles an hour? But I don't even know if that's fair. Like that's one of those questions that you watch him enough and you try and look at it and say, are there more clear-cut situations where he could be a little bit more patient, and does this one just kind of symptomatic of that, or is it just a one-off play? There you go. Look at that. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's that
Jared,
size there, Garrett.
Jared, I'm glad you skipped past that pass protection there because that was pretty bad. So I'm glad you kept going.
You noticed that, huh?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, good run here.
A big thing for me is seeing guys that are able to, behind the line of scrimmage, be creative and they're creators in plays. There's some guys that, and it's actually one of my, even though he's, right up there in the top 3 backs in the class, my one biggest concern with Jonathan Taylor is he's not very creative behind the line of scrimmage. If he goes to a place that doesn't have a solid offensive line, he has to do that more often than we'd like. Will he be able to do that well at the next level? So when I can see guys, Perine did that a couple times. We saw McFarland do that there with some of those nice cuts, ability to change direction with a defender in his face with hardly any room is one of the most encouraging things for me because to me it means they're less dependent on a good offensive line.
And you look at this particular play. I mean, I hear your point. I mean, it's a good one when you're talking about backs and kind of the creativity that they need to have to an extent with that, but and then you coming on this play. I mean, this is it looks like we have a pretty loaded box here. The beginning, I mean, at least, 7. We've got 7 and maybe you count 8 now. Yeah.
And the safety. Yep.
So it's a nice job of him here. I mean, again, giving that time for the fullback to kind of work inside there or work to the edge and then him work around it.
Yeah, bad job before there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really set up for him, though. I mean, we look at it, we think it's a good play, but it's not a great play because the defense just was bad.
Yeah.
Left a big gap in there. And I mean, I know you guys all like Dobbins, but I found a lot of those plays, Matt, with him, where it was they were worried about Fields, and there's some pretty big gaps as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's, that's why kind of to me it's often about what behaviors can the back control and do they
Mm-hmm.
set, or a player, does the player create situations where good things can happen for his teammates, or good things can happen for his team.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I mean, the classic example for me, you mentioned Matt Forte. I remember watching him against LSU, and I say this a lot on a lot of shows. Watch him against LSU,
good effort.
average less than 2 yards a carry. That whole offense, that whole team didn't have a player who could bench press all but one player on LSU's team, and he still scored high because
Yeah.
he could control what he could control.
I'll tell you what, it's been a while since I've done my eval on McFarland, and I might be moving him up a little bit here. I just love the way he runs his feet. They never stop.
Yeah,
And he has
I mean,
good pad level.
this stuff's good, and I love the fact that he kind of gets low there and is able to work through. It looks like the safety or the outside linebacker there. I think my biggest concern is, again, where his fit. Like if you're separating gap scheme backs from zone scheme backs, I like him more.
Mm-hmm.
If you're saying, all right, guys, if you're judging running backs by all the things that they can do, then it's kind of like, okay, you gotta account for that.
Yeah, here's a zone.
He kind of missed it here, didn't he? He read those two.
It's
Maybe
like
cut back one too far.
One much. Yep.
Yeah. Slow it down a little bit if you can.
I mean, he still could have went outside here too. Really.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Let's see. Let's one more time. Go one more frame
Back.
here. Yeah, to keep going forward, just a little bit by little bit. So, I mean, I think this is an area where he saw a flash maybe of that linebacker who's coming through, and he tried to cut it back when he had the lead blocker. I think Nick's right. This is where he could have just stayed that line and really turned it upfield.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I worry about him a little bit, is that at his worst, and every player at their worst does some things that you're just like, you can make it sound as derogatory as it, more derogatory than they are. But it's like, McFarland's the kind of guy that if you were going to insult his game, you would say he's a guy that can turn a good play into a bad one. Like he'll be in the middle of a good situation and then just like not make the right decision. And you're like, you're at the edge of success. And then you hit the self-destruct button. and it's like his game kind of does that sometimes, where it's like, you're in the crease. Why did you reverse field? Or you're in the crease. Why did you try to cut back? You already were there. Like, just keep going. And there's some plays from last year. And again, you talked about injury. You talked about some differences there. Maybe some of that was the case, but he's like that, I don't know. I'm older than you guys, so I've had probably more relationships than you guys did, and I'm happily married now, thankfully. But, I definitely was one of those people that I could say that, like many, that you look like you're heading in the right direction there, and then you pick the wrong situation to be in. And everybody's like, dude, we set you up with her. She was like, she's great. And then you pick that person who really likes trouble. And like,
right.
I like trouble. I don't know. It was fun, but it
was
didn't last very well.
That's funny. Yeah. I mean, that's so true. And like, when you want to talk about, earlier we talked about like floor for running back and stay ahead of the chains. Perine, I think, does that. Dobbins does that. I think Edwards-Helaire does that. Mm-hmm. McFarland doesn't.
No.
Akers doesn't. There's a few of them where they're high and they're low are much bigger than. I mean, earlier you had talked about Taylor Garrett. I mean, Taylor, I think mentally is like Adrian Peterson, where he's going to stay with the play design and cut a little bit off of that. And
Absolutely.
That's just who he is as an artist in terms of running.
Absolutely.
And his flaw is he'll just get downhill too quickly. He's not going to try and dance or go and cut all the way back. That's just who they are in terms of their art form. McFarland's going to try and do way too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, if Taylor goes to a team with a solid, solid offensive line, a good zone scheme. I mean, he'll eat. I have no doubt about that. It's just if things don't go that direction, I'm a little more concerned. But if he lands on the Colts, or if he lands on something ridiculous like that, like dude could put up 1,800 yards in a second.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch him play.
It's gonna be fun. I can't wait for the draft. Oh, can't wait.
It's gonna be interesting to watch with how different it's gonna be this year too.
Oh yeah.
Well, fortunately, those guys don't have to get on a boat now. I was worried, are they going to put life preservers on some of those guys? Because some of them big boys, 350 pounds, you put them in a little boat. I don't know how that was going to work out.
So what was different here than the other one when he cuts it back?
Yeah, let's see that.
There's
a little more of a push on 71 early, but that's where he probably should have cut it.
He could have cut that one back.
Everyone's to the outside again.
He seems like he's in a rush.
Yep.
More often than not, I like to see him have a little more pace behind the line of scrimmage.
Slow to quick through.
I just looked. I have him at running back 13, which, now that I think about it, it's pretty fair.
I think I have him a tiny bit higher. Oh, I forgot to say what the nerd score was. I pumped it up early, and now I forgot. Look at that.
He's 63 or something.
63. He's got a 63.48 coming in as our 14th ranked running back. He's right in the same range as Josh Kelly, Rico Dowdle, and we're kind of low on Eno Benjamin. So in the range of those three guys.
Rico Dowdle.
That was you. You pumped up Rico's.
Hey, I like him, man. He's got some. I
paid him.
Another guy who has injury concerns.
That was definitely.
He's got some talent.
I have him 7. So.
You have Rico 7?
No, McFarland 7.
Okay. All right. I was like, whoa. I was about to be.
I have Perine 9.
How far did you move up Van Jefferson?
That's a nice little move there.
I'm high on Van Jefferson. I'm curious your thoughts on him, Matt.
Van Jefferson?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I like him all right. I think I think that if he starts working on his hand positions, in terms of tracking the trajectory of the ball over the middle, if he works on that as much as he's worked on his routes, he'll be even better. But right now, I think that he's a good player who will likely become a starter, especially in the slot. But I want to see him. I feel like that he still has work to do against patient cornerbacks. I think patient cornerbacks got the better of him, and very few cornerbacks were that patient. But you could see it on occasion. And I thought that his hand usage, he fought the ball at times on routes that should have been easier catches. But fantastic route runner. I mean, man, he can tell a story at the line. He can tell a story at the line of scrimmage that's efficient and fast. Whereas, like, you go look at a guy like Andy Isabella. He's really prolific with all the moves that he has. But it's like that works well in practice, but in games sometimes it's not efficient enough. And it's like, and a guy like Van Jefferson, man, dude, 1 yard of space and he's told like a story, and he told 3 parts of a story and he's already gone, and that's talented.
And the important part too, and you talked about it in terms of space, is because we always taught our receivers, not only do you have to get off of the press coverage as quickly as possible, you have to do it in the shortest amount of area too, because that increases separation and timing for your quarterback. So
right,
yeah, I'm big on Jefferson. I have him in my top 10, so I'm really high on Van.
Nice.
We'll get through this one a little quicker, but just because we're running, I don't know. I got plenty of time, but I don't want to keep you guys.
Yeah.
But we got Syracuse here. Any thoughts on Javon Leak? Daniel Wright asks.
Let me think about Leak here. Some things that I can look at. It's been a bit.
Garrett, you've talked about Leak before. I don't really have too much to say.
I don't have a ton of notes on him. Like I said, I have a little bit of a conspiracy theory with, I'm wondering what was going on at Maryland, because I thought both of those guys could have used another year in a college system. So I'm not quite sure what was going on there at Maryland for both of those guys to exit. I thought that was interesting, but I'm not very high on Leak. We actually we weren't even high enough to put him in our tape score for the nerd score. So Matt, if you have any strong opinions one way or another on Leak.
Yeah, he was my 49th back out of the 55 that I watched.
Okay.
And so he didn't,
that says enough.
Yeah, he had some issues. Let's put it that way. He had a lot of issues with his game that I think needed correcting.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised both of these guys came out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have him pretty low too. He's got tight hips. There's not a huge upside there. I think he could be an NFL guy in terms of if he helps out with special teams, but I'm not sure he's ever going to be fantasy relevant.
I'm not sure he gets drafted.
No, I don't think so.
The heck? Fooled me.
That's a good little cut.
Yeah. The lane develops there. Good job of pressing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And safety flows.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice. Not much more you could ask from that.
No. But I also like his attitude. Like, despite the,
Hits it up in there.
rumor of him being small. this is what I'm going to get,
Yeah, he's tough.
Yeah.
He's a
Versus
tough runner.
Darrington Evans wouldn't do that.
No.
Yeah. We haven't covered him yet, have we, Nick?
No.
No, I'm not as high on him. So
No, I think he came in pretty low in our nerd score.
It wasn't like super low though. I think
he came in at like 17 out of our running backs.
Okay. Hey Matt, have you had a chance to watch Xavier? Well, I'm sure you've watched him, but what do you think about Xavier Jones from SMU? Yeah,
I liked him. I think that ultimately, I think at first I thought I would have a higher grade on him than I did, but I think he's really sudden. I think he hits the creases hard. I wondered about his long speed after his initial acceleration, but I think he's a guy who he kind of reminded me in style of Reggie Bush, in terms of just
Very
stylistically.
shifty.
Yeah, very. It seemed like if I remember correctly, pretty good receiver.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
He does everything pretty well, is what I came away with, and he does a really good job of making people miss. Like one of the better guys in the class.
yeah, I gave him a star caliber grade for elusive. So he had a top tier grade in that area of just being able to make people miss.
Mm-hmm.
Look at him fight on that play. You want to go back? It's third and 2, but he just fights. This is what I like.
Yeah.
You have to have that in a smaller
respect that.
back. If you don't have that, there's no chance, potential wise.
And there's explosion through those second moves. You just see how fast he sheds the guy. You don't see how he really does it, but it's like because his feet are moving, as Garrett talked about, I think too, is that he keeps his feet moving well.
Mm-hmm.
He just it's like when the weight comes off, you just see the burst come through there.
They keeps tricking me. Seriously.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. It's a good job on the quarterback.
A lot of misdirection.
That one was like, okay.
Earlier, you had talked about just someone getting into scouting, Matt, and focusing on one thing. I found just on YouTube, NFL.com, and a lot of these places, they'll have coaches, they'll have players talking about their games and things they see and reads. That's one resource that I found where you can cut the work down if you talk to Malcolm Jenkins and he talks through pre-snap what he reads and things like that. I think it's really useful.
Yes, that's a great point, and it kind of does help you see what the advanced players, how they view things, and that gives you also an idea of how much preparation they have, and And some of the things that I'd also talk about is that this may be intimidating to some people. It certainly was for someone like me because I wasn't a player. But there's the whole football's kind of like academic silos. You kind of have like if you went to a school and you saw like they have different departments, for anthropology and film, and theater and music and business, it's kind of like for football, and even within it, like business, you have finance, accounting, real estate, whatever. You look in football and you have analytics, you have, film evaluation. Ooh, yeah. You have scheme, people who talk about scheme and play calling.
Damn, that's a cut.
Yeah. Got one more time.
Peyton Manning's detail is a great one.
Yes. But that's nice.
You got him to bite. Whew,
Yeah.
You got him to bite.
I mean, you have strength staff. I mean, that's huge, and the nutrition and
Yeah. And
skill part of it.
that's really nice with the way he opened those hips and exploded through that for sure.
On one of the earlier runs that we didn't get a chance to touch on, it was interesting because we talked about how he's always moving ahead. He doesn't really have much of a pace. He slipped actually on one of the runs, and it actually helped him get a seam because it forced him to slow down. It was kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, but and when you talk about the different silos, it's like, listen, I mean, when it can help you to learn about scheme and learn about the drawing up plays. But, one of the things that I know Mark Schofield and I were talking about, who writes with me at the Rookie Scouting Portfolio, former quarterback, is like, we were talking about this last week. He said he's kind of come to the conclusion a little bit more and more, kind of where I've been lately, which is it's about reading leverage of the defense. It's nice to know what Dan Orlovsky knows when he puts it all on tape, and he does a great job of that on TV. But that can be helpful to an extent, but really what the quarterback's looking for is, where's the man, who's playing zone, where are my progressions on the field, and what is the leverage of the defender, and should I know when to let the ball go? And so I think from a scouting perspective, sometimes if you don't have to get so intimidated about, I've got to know like every defense, I have to be able to read every coverage, I have to know what all the techniques are on the defensive line. And yeah, all those things can be helpful, and you want to keep working on learning them. But if you're focusing on the techniques of the individual positions and then how their position fits into the whole, you'll discover that watching a running back and what the line is supposed to do, you'll start to learn about what the line is supposed to do.
Jared, can you actually go back to
the reception?
Oh, I know.
The long one. So watch how quickly he gets back to full speed. That's something that Travis Etienne does crazy well. But right out of slipping that tackle, 2 steps, and he's basically back up to full speed. It's really impressive to watch.
And it's that immediate transition downhill again.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I like, and this is something that you see out of CeeDee Lamb, and I think I've seen out of Hunter Bryant as well. When he catches this with his back to the defender, this peak in which way to turn, I think is what separates so many players from, hey, that's a decent gain, to look at what he just did, which is like special. That feel of which way to move and catching it and thinking, hey, I need to see where this guy is on my back.
Yeah, and where does the ball arrive? Does it arrive on the outside shoulder or the inside shoulder? Because I think it was on the inside shoulder, but he moved it to his outside shoulder.
There's a great look at it.
It's like Leroy Human painting.
Heck?
There we go.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But
But
maybe he was
not
led
either.
inside a little bit, maybe.
Yeah,
I know Lamb does a great job of that.
Because if he's led inside, then what he's doing is they call it, you can call that obeying the ball. Like if you're led inside, obey that and trust it and go inside. If you're put outside,
I don't know if he means to do this, but I think the fact that he kind of comes back towards the line of scrimmage on this route gives him more separation. And if he meant to do it, that's pretty headsy play.
Yeah.
He's a fun player to watch. That Ohio State game last
Yeah,
2 years
people are
ago
talking
was
about
just.
that in the chat.
I mean,
I
I mean, they schemed it well. Those 2 early runs. I mean, Ohio State was really badly over schemed. I mean, they,
Yep.
motioned and it was trips to the field side and they ran to the boundary. I
I
mean,
like
it's a
purposely
good
didn't
scheme.
pick that film just because it was so outrageous, and it was on Daily Motion, which
And it hurts a little bit too much.
yeah, we're Buckeye fans out here, Waldman.
See, there you go. Most of my family graduated from there, so
Okay.
There you go.
you got Buckeyes and Badgers here. I see how this goes. Now I understand.
Where are you from?
I grew up half my childhood in Cleveland, Ohio,
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
and
Cool.
then the other half in Atlanta.
Well, when you mentioned Andy Isabella, I was like, oh, Andy Isabella went to what? Ignatius, I think?
Mayfield High School. I think Mayfield High School.
Okay. All right.
Garrett
Yeah,
and I
that's
are in North Canton.
Okay. There you
What
go.
what do you guys think if we transition out of here and we talk about AJ Dillon?
Yeah, that sounds good
Okay.
because I do want to hear your thoughts here on Dillon because I'm very intrigued as to what you think about him.
Sure. And
I'll let you take the lead on this one, Garrett, because I think you're the most anti-Dillon guy here.
Don't frame it like that.
It's
Hey,
okay.
man, Matt's got to know. Don't hide because Matt's here. Be
Yes,
honest.
please. It's okay.
I am very anti AJ Dillon.
That's good because I mean that's where it goes. I mean, I know like Dan Hatman liked Jordan Love, and I'm like, I don't get it at all. I like Jake Fromm, and Mark Schofield wrote me and goes, I'm stunned. Like I'm
actually kinda
stunned
like
that
Fromm,
you like
too,
him
so I'm
that
with
high.
you
Yeah. So things like that happen. So yeah,
So,
look
yeah, so-
look where you got Dillon. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, it's pretty low. It's pretty low.
Okay, so why are you down on him?
So here's a couple of the things that I'm well, I'll start with being the one thing that I saw that I was impressed with was I think for a player of his size, he actually has pretty nimble feet. And that's one of, I think, his best qualities. My biggest concern is when he is in the open field, when he has a lot of space, he does have that speed. We saw it at the combine. But the time it takes for him to get there, especially if it's not a straight line, is forever. And for somebody that is 240 something pounds, he doesn't run like he's 240 something pounds, and he doesn't utilize what I believe is his best asset is his size and his ability to be able to get downhill. And I don't think he breaks enough tackles. He falls forward, which you would expect for a guy that big, and so I appreciate that. But I don't see the athleticism that we saw at the combine. I just don't see that translating on the field as much.
Okay. Yeah. And, this is one of those situations where, we probably disagree on where we feel his power is and if he has power. And, it's very, very easily that I could have, at the games that I watched, I saw certain things that maybe you didn't, or that I saw some things that I thought I saw and maybe didn't happen. I mean, that can happen. We have those types of biases sometimes in our game. So for me, I saw games like against Syracuse and Virginia Tech and Louisville, where I saw him bounce off linebacker hits and actually pull through wraps or hits to his, to his, knees or lower, and also to his hips and higher, and be able to show that kind of ability to break tackles and lean forward and get some extra yards, but also be able to just straight up break a tackle and even near or at the line of scrimmage, as opposed to after he's built momentum and had to do it. You're right. I mean, we're in agreement about that. He's nimble. And he has a nice spin. But I think he has a few more moves in that he's not sudden in his movements, I don't think. But I think where we're probably separate the most is because acceleration is such an important trait to running back play. In terms of maybe a physical skill is that initial acceleration.
Mm-hmm.
I had Dillon probably graded high enough that might even spell the power and the acceleration are probably what spell the difference for us. Because
Okay.
I had strong power for him, and then I had starter caliber acceleration for him, initial acceleration. But and I tend to be more where I may err as a guy with physical traits. I know that you know people have a range for what's acceptable speed and acceleration and change of direction quickness, and my boundaries are probably a little wider than the average bear when it
Sure.
comes to that.
Mhm.
So he may be where I have him as a starter. You might look at it and have him as a you know a committee guy as a
Mhm.
or even a reserve compared to where I do.
Mhm.
Yeah, my other thing was, and this is strictly for fantasy football. So had it been, just NFL football, I might have had him a tad bit higher. I still wouldn't be high on him, but I might have had him a tad bit higher. The other thing I'm concerned about is I just don't know that he'll ever be regularly involved in the passing game.
Yeah, and I think that there are a lot of teams that will probably feel that way when they think, okay, he's you know he's a check down guy. Like I've seen him as more of a check down wide route, screen route, kind of flat route player. I think he can do that fine, but other teams will probably say, well, we can find another guy who can give that dimension. But as a blocker, I mean, you're going to want him on the field,
Mm-hmm.
if you ask me, because while he sometimes has some issues setting up quickly to the outside and not overrunning the play, he squares linebackers very
He
well,
does.
punches them and turns them. He cuts defensive ends really well. He can work across the field and do that. And so to me, it's kind of like we know he can catch decently enough and you know he can block well and get better at it. He might be a guy that's an asset in that regard because teams are going to get to know him as a he's going to take on that end with the tight end, or he's going to take on the linebacker, and then they blitz. He comes on, he sheds that. There he is on the middle screen, and have fun.
Jared, I'm glad you're highlighting what you did. That we agree on that part. We actually have him in our nerd score as our second best second best in pass pro in the class.
Nice.
So
Let
we
me.
do agree on that.
Can I bring in two other points you guys haven't talked about to his game? I'll do one positive, one negative, and I'd love to see where you guys are on this. One thing that I do like that he does is I think that for a big guy, it's surprising that he can make those subtle cuts, that he can alter his course slightly
Mm-hmm.
where you would think he's not. And you said nimble, Jared, or sorry, Garrett.
Yeah.
Maybe nimble. I think of nimble as like it just moves, but these subtle cuts, that's a feel thing. And I think as in terms of a pure runner, he's got some feel. I mean, in high school, he was ridiculous. And I'm like, okay, he's not going to be that athletic or that much bigger than everyone in college. And he kept doing it every year. A negative is there's times when he gets past the line and he's at the second or third level. And I want him to run with more conviction. I feel like he tries to get too cute with defensive backs. And I want him to be who he is and have more, decisiveness. I don't know if you guys have seen that stuff as well.
Yeah, that's kind of a Michael Bush kind of quality where Michael Bush back in the day was a player who was
Michael
big and former quarterback out in the
Yep.
Kentucky area, played at Louisville. And I used to remember listening to Chris Spielman, who I still learn so much from whenever he's on a telecast, and Chris Spielman saying, he said, I just want Michael Bush to become what he is in terms of size. Don't be a scat back. Lower those pads. And I remember it was a game against, I think, Memphis with D'Angelo Williams in that game. And he was he did contrast the two, but it was enough to listen the way he talked about both. It was like D'Angelo Williams ran like Michael Bush, and Michael Bush ran like what he thought that D'Angelo Williams should run like, So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I like your point about the footwork. Like I noticed that he could, when you transition from runs, like one of the things I look for perimeter runs is when you transition downhill from that running to the edge, how many prep steps does it take you to kind of get downhill? And that kind of gives you an idea of their agility on that type of run. And he only needed 2 small prep steps to get like downhill after working full speed to the outside. And that's pretty impressive for a big guy like that to be able to do. So like you said, altering course, I noticed that in that area.
Yeah, he's definitely a very, very interesting case because you'll see some things you really like. And I want to say, like, in a way, I mean, when he gets in the open field, it's almost like, remember Jeremy Hill at LSU, where it's like, man, this is a freight train and it's tough to stop him in college. But then you see
Yeah.
other times when you're like, he should have done more there. There's some inconsistency too.
Yeah, and I think that Garrett's right about, Garrett, I think you're right about that you'd like to see, or Nick, you said this too, but I think you both kind of echoed these sentiments, is that he could be a little bit more, um, he can be a little bit more of a power guy once he gets through that line, and that there are times that he tries just a little too hard to be a little extra, and a lot of those big backs do that when they're nimble.
Little finesse. Yeah.
Yeah, like Siwo Olanula.
Yeah.
That guy, he thinks he's like a 5'8", 200, 195-pound back on some occasions, where you're just like, dude, I know that you're known for this. And I compared him to Jeremy Hill, like on a low end, like the low end of what Jeremy Hill showed. So it's funny that you mentioned him, and I just realized that when I was looking at my list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the fun part about doing this with you, Matt, is we can talk about all these older guys, because I remember when I was first starting out with this, that I DM'd you and I said, Matt, I really like Bilal Powell. Do you like him? And you're like, yeah, I like him too. I'm like, okay, good, I'm on the right path, But I mean, that's an old
right
school
guy.
Bilal Powell,
It's crazy. Funny. It's crazy that Bilal Powell is old now.
I know.
That's just, oh my goodness,
it's so fast, man.
So, I mean, well, yeah.
Matt, who's your top running back sleeper in this class?
I don't. While nobody's really talking about Joshua Kelly, there's a few. He's picking up more steam, and I like him.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to go deeper than that, because I think that he's already kind of got that love.
Yeah.
Okay. Tyson Williams of BYU. Tyson Williams is a guy I really like, and he was a 4-star recruit at North Carolina. He was behind TJ Logan and Elijah Hood during the Mitchell Trubisky era. And I think he was like, forget it, I'm out of here. And he went to South Carolina, where it was the running back carousel kind of situation. Rico Dowdle gets hurt. They put him in. He plays well, shows some good stuff in terms of that 6 foot, 222-pound kind of frame to run through people, run around people, good vision, catches the ball well. And then they benched him, and they were like, well, our offensive line struggled, and there's whispers about fumbles, and it's like, he only fumbled once ever at South Carolina. So then after 2 years and he graduates, he becomes a graduate transfer, goes to BYU. They absolutely love him. He becomes their uncontested starter. He puts up good games against Tennessee, USC, Utah, and then he's in the middle, I think, of the Washington game. I think that was the 4th game, and he tears his ACL. So you don't know much. People don't know much about him in a lot of ways. But I think he's a guy. I have him in my top 10 in terms of overall talent in this class. I think he's rugged. He's quick and fluid. And I think that he's a guy that can run both zone and gap. He was smart about it. He has that ability to kind of explode out of cuts and change his hips well. I don't know if he's unbelievably fast, so he could fall into that area of, who's the BYU Williams kid? I'm trying to remember his name. Jamal Williams. He might end up being a little bit more of a plotter like Williams is, where he can contribute, but he's not a great fantasy play. But I think he's faster than that from what I've seen, and he should be recovered by now, or at least, he should be recovered by when we think training or hope training camp will be. And if that happens, maybe he'll be able to compete for a job. If not, he might be kind of unofficially redshirted in the NFL for a year. But 6 foot 220, who can run the way he does, and catch the ball, and he blocks pretty well. And South Carolina kind of has a reputation, at least it was during the Steve Spurrier era for sure, that they didn't get the most out of their players who could have been pro prospects. And I've heard that from some people. And I've kind of mentioned that again this year, even though it's Will Muschamp's group. But I've had some people who coach in the South Carolina area as high school coaches, and they go, that's still kind of a feel that we have about the university there in terms of that school. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there were some things going on there that maybe That's why I like Dowdle more, but they went off and Russ Landy, who's the, former NFL scout and scouts for the Calgary Stampeders. Um, he was kind of like telling me that it was, when a team calls out a player and says, we think he could be much better than he is if he puts his mind to it. They said that about Rico Dowdle, and I like Rico Dowdle just like Nick does. And, he said that could be a red flag. But then at the same time, you look at, that staff and how things are, and that Dowdle kept getting hurt, unless they're just saying that he didn't prepare his body enough, and that they were critical about that. That I look at all of this and I think, I'm willing to see what I see on tape and roll with that.
Very cool.
Awesome.
It kind of reminds me of Tennessee, like never getting enough out of their players. And then you see Memphis, and it's like an NFL factory lately. It's ridiculous what they're doing.
Yep.
Yeah, admittedly, I haven't watched any of Tyson Williams, so I'm going to have to go back to the tape and check him out.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what you think. It'd be fun to just kind of like hear from you and tell me what you think when you guys see him, and maybe you'll go, you're crazy, but that's kind of where I saw him, and he's awesome. He's a nice deer.
Love it.
Well, Nick, you want to wrap us up here?
Yeah. This is fun.
I know.
We went way over, but that's how it always is with Matt, because you just never want to end a conversation, because it's like so many just like golden gems all the time. And plus, Matt, I mean, as I said, I consider you a friend. It's just nice just to see and talk with you. So,
same here, man.
And you're a better person than people even realize, off air too. You're such a kind person. I appreciate that. So thank you for coming on. Everyone, invest in his site, invest in his publications, watch, his videos. It's going to be educational, just like this was. If you didn't find this educational, I don't know what you're watching, but his videos are even more so than this. So you'll definitely will benefit from that. And we have one more before the NFL draft, so we're all going to be pumped about that. But you guys can follow Matt, Matt Waldman, RSP.com. He's on Twitter. We're all on Twitter. Until next time.
See you later, nerds.
Thank you, guys.